The concrete pillar exploded beside Jun Seo's head as the fifth attacker's baton struck where his skull had been a heartbeat before. Blood trickled from his split lip, his tailored charcoal suit torn at the shoulder. 5 men had cornered him in the rain-soaked parking garage beneath the waterfront restaurant, and even the Korean Mafia boss knew the mathematics of survival were working against him. Then she appeared. Imani Rose stepped through the emergency exit, still wearing her black waitress apron, curls escaping from their careful pins. 27 years old, black, beautiful, and completely out of place in a world of violence and betrayal. The attackers barely glanced at her. Just another civilian who'd stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. They had no idea what they were looking at. "Get back inside," Jun Seo ordered through gritted teeth, dodging another swing. Imani didn't move. Her dark eyes assessed the scene with military precision, exits, weapons, positioning. "They boxed you in," she said quietly. "Someone inside your circle sold you out." One of the men laughed, turning toward her with casual menace. "The waitress thinks she's part of this." That's when everything changed. The first attacker lunged at her, expecting easy prey. Imani moved like water, fluid, controlled, devastating. She redirected his momentum, twisted his wrist with surgical precision, and sent him crashing into the concrete wall. His weapon clattered across the oil-stained floor. The garage fell silent, except for the echo of impact. Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Tonight's story will leave you breathless. Comment where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us bring you these incredible love stories every week. 2 hours earlier, Imani had been refilling coffee cups and pretending not to notice the tension crackling through Pier 47 restaurant like electricity before a storm. The waterfront establishment catered to Seattle's elite, tech moguls, shipping magnates, and men in expensive suits who spoke in careful whispers about things that never appeared in newspapers. She'd been working there for 8 months, saving every tip toward her goal of opening a self-defense studio for women. The irony wasn't lost on her, a former military police officer serving overpriced salmon to people who probably had more money in their wallets than she made in a month. But honest work was honest work, and Imani had learned to value honesty above everything else. Kang Jun Seo arrived at 9:30, as he had every Friday for the past 3 months. 31 years old, devastatingly handsome in that sharp-edged way that made smart women stupid and stupid women dangerous. His black hair was perfectly styled, swept back to reveal features that belonged on magazine covers, if magazine covers featured men who could end lives with a phone call. Imani had done her research after the first night he tipped her $200 for bringing him green tea. Kang Jun Seo wasn't just wealthy, he was the head of the most powerful Korean organization on the West Coast. Legitimate businesses fronted operations that were anything but. Real estate, shipping, entertainment venues that laundered money as efficiently as they served drinks. He always sat alone at table 12 facing the entrance, always ordered the same thing, grilled mackerel, steamed rice, green tea, always left exactly at 10:15. Tonight felt different. His usual bodyguards weren't positioned by the windows. The men at the bar kept checking their phones with nervous energy. And when Jun Seo's lieutenant whispered something in his ear, his jaw tightened in a way that made Imani's military training kick into high alert. She'd seen that look before, in Afghanistan, in the moments before everything went wrong. "Another tea, Mr. Kang?" she asked, approaching his table with practiced professionalism. He looked up, and for a moment his carefully controlled mask slipped. She saw exhaustion there, the weight of decisions that kept him awake at night. "Thank you, Imani." He knew her name, he'd never used it before. "Everything all right tonight?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Waitresses didn't ask Korean Mafia bosses about their feelings. Jun Seo studied her face with those dark, intelligent eyes. "You should leave early tonight. Take the front exit." Warning bells exploded in her head. "Sir, trust me." His voice carried absolute authority. "Go home. Now." But Imani had learned long ago that when dangerous men told you to run, it usually meant someone else was about to die. She nodded, collected his empty cup and walked toward the kitchen, then doubled back through the service corridor that led to the parking garage. She'd been trained to move toward danger, not away from it. Some habits died hard. The emergency exit opened onto concrete and shadows. Rain drummed against the garage's open sides, and fluorescent lights flickered overhead like dying stars. Junseo stood near his black Mercedes, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean. Then she saw them. 5 men emerged from behind concrete pillars with the coordinated precision of a military unit. No shouting, no dramatic speeches, just the cold efficiency of professionals who'd done this before. Imani's hand moved instinctively to her hip, where her service weapon used to rest. Found nothing but the black apron of a waitress who was supposed to be safe in her new, honest life. She should have called the police, should have run back inside and locked the door. Instead, she stepped into the garage and let her training take over. The first attacker moved toward Junseo with a telescoping baton, confident in the numbers game. The Korean Mafia boss shifted into a defensive stance, his expensive suit hiding muscles that spoke of discipline and violence. But even he couldn't be everywhere at once. Imani had maybe 3 seconds before someone noticed her, 3 seconds to decide who she was going to be, the waitress who served coffee and minded her own business, or the soldier who'd sworn to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The choice made itself. She moved like her drill sergeant had taught her, fast, quiet, decisive. The nearest attacker was focused on Junseo, his back turned to what he assumed was empty space. Imani grabbed a tire iron from a maintenance cart and brought it down on his wrist with surgical precision. Bone cracked. The baton clattered to the concrete. What the? The man spun toward her, shock-replacing confidence. It's just the waitress. Just the waitress. If only he knew. Imani had graduated top of her class from military police training. Had served 2 tours overseas, protecting convoys and investigating crimes in war zones where death came in 100 different flavors. She'd left that life behind because she'd wanted something clean, something that didn't require her to sleep with a weapon under her pillow. But muscle memory was a beautiful thing. The injured attacker swung at her with his good hand. Imani ducked, stepped inside his reach, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. He dropped like a stone, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Imani, get out of here. Junseo's voice cut through the chaos as he grappled with 2 men simultaneously. She ignored him. The third attacker was circling behind Junseo, knife glinting in the fluorescent light. Imani grabbed the fallen baton and threw it with the accuracy that had made her the best marksman in her unit. It caught the knifeman in the temple, sending him stumbling into a concrete pillar. That left 2. The leader, a scarred man with dead eyes and expensive shoes, pulled a gun, not to shoot Junseo, to shoot her. Should have minded your own business, sweetheart. Time slowed. Imani saw the finger tighten on the trigger, saw Junseo's eyes widen in horror, saw her own death approaching at 900 feet per second. Then Junseo moved. He threw himself between them, his body shielding hers as the gun fired. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Blood bloomed across his white shirt like a crimson flower. No, the word tore from Imani's throat as she caught him, her hands immediately applying pressure to the wound. Military training kicked in. Assess, stabilize, survive. The leader raised his gun again, this time aiming for Junseo's head. Imani moved without thinking. She grabbed the knife from the fallen attacker and threw it in one fluid motion. It buried itself in the gunman's forearm, and his shot went wide, sparking off concrete. Car engines roared outside the garage. Headlights swept across the scene as 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt. Men in dark suits poured out, Junseo's people finally arriving. But it was over. The attackers were down or disarmed, and Imani knelt in a spreading pool of blood, keeping pressure on a wound that could have been hers. "Why?" she whispered as paramedics rushed in. "Why did you—" Junseo's eyes found hers, pain and something else swimming in their depths. "Because you saved me first." As they loaded him into the ambulance, he grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. This wasn't random. Someone inside my organization set this up, someone who knew I'd be alone tonight. Then you need to find out who. We need to find out who. His grip tightened. You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not. The ambulance doors closed, leaving Imani alone in a parking garage that smelled of gunpowder and betrayal, her waitress uniform stained with the blood of a man she barely knew, but had risked everything to save. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed inside. This is just the beginning. Seattle General Hospital at 2 in the morning was a monument to human suffering and fluorescent lighting. Imani sat in the surgical waiting room, still wearing her blood-stained uniform, watching news reports about a gang-related incident at a waterfront restaurant. The media had gotten it wrong, as usual. This wasn't about territory or drugs or any of the usual reasons men killed each other. This was about betrayal. Miss Rowe, a doctor in scrubs, approached, exhaustion written in the lines around her eyes. Mr. Kang is stable. The bullet missed major arteries, but he lost a lot of blood. He's asking for you. Imani followed her through sterile corridors that smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Junseo lay propped against white pillows, his shoulder wrapped in bandages, an IV dripping clear fluid into his arm. Without his suit jacket, she could see the full extent of his build, lean muscle earned through discipline, not vanity. A dragon tattoo curved around his left shoulder, its scales disappearing beneath the hospital gown. You stayed, he said when she entered. You took a bullet for a waitress. Seemed like the least I could do. You're not just a waitress. His dark eyes studied her with uncomfortable intensity. Military? Military police. 2 tours in Afghanistan. Honorable discharge 3 years ago. No point in lying now. I came to Seattle to start over. Clean slate, honest work. What happened over there? The question hung in the air like smoke. Imani had spent 3 years avoiding that conversation, even with therapists who specialized in helping soldiers transition to civilian life. But something about lying in a hospital bed after taking a bullet for her made honesty feel necessary. My unit was investigating corruption in the Afghan National Police. Someone was selling weapons to insurgents, getting our people killed. I found evidence, built a case. She sat in the visitor's chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The someone turned out to be my commanding officer, a man I'd trusted with my life. What did you do? My job. I turned him in. Testified at his court-martial, watched him get sentenced to 20 years in Leavenworth. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. His friends made sure I knew I wasn't welcome anymore, made my life hell until I finally took the discharge. Junseo was quiet for a long moment. You chose justice over loyalty. I chose right over wrong. There's a difference. In my world, loyalty is everything. It's what keeps us alive, keeps our families safe. But tonight, he touched his bandaged shoulder. Tonight I learned that loyalty without honor is just another word for corruption. Before Imani could respond, the door opened. A man in an expensive suit entered. Tall, Korean, with the kind of cold eyes that had seen too much violence. He stopped short when he saw Imani. Hyung, he said to Junseo in Korean, then switched to English. Who is this? The woman who saved my life. Imani, this is my brother, Kang Minjun, my second in command. Minjun's gaze swept over her blood-stained uniform with obvious disdain. A waitress? Junseo, you can't be serious. She's former military police. She fought beside me tonight when 5 men tried to kill me in that garage. Junseo's voice carried a warning edge. She's earned the right to be here. And where were my men when this happened? Minjun's question was directed at his brother, but his eyes never left Imani. Where was the security detail that's supposed to protect you? Good question. Where were they? The tension in the room thickened like fog. Imani felt like she was watching a chess match where she didn't know the rules, but she could sense the danger in every move. I'll look into it, Minjun said finally. But first, we need to discuss what happens next. The Nakamura family is already asking questions about tonight. They think we're weak, that we can't protect our own territory. Let them think what they want. Jun Seo, you were nearly killed by street thugs. Our reputation, Jun Seo interrupted, is built on fear and violence. Maybe it's time to build something else. Min Jun stared at his brother like he'd spoken in a foreign language. What are you talking about? I'm talking about change. Real change. No more protection rackets. No more intimidation. No more blood money. We go legitimate completely. You're in shock. The doctor said, I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. Jun Seo's gaze found Imani's. Someone I barely know risked her life to save mine tonight. No profit motive, no family obligation, no fear of consequences, just because it was right. When's the last time anyone in our organization did something just because it was right? The silence stretched until Min Jun's phone buzzed. He checked the message, and his expression darkened. We have a problem. The men who attacked you tonight, they're all dead. What? Found in their cells an hour ago, apparent suicides, but... He showed them a photo on his phone. 3 men hanging from bed sheets, their faces purple and swollen. This wasn't suicide. Someone wanted them silenced. Imani felt ice form in her stomach. Someone with access to the jail. Someone with resources, connections, power. Jun Seo struggled to sit up straighter, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. Someone who knew exactly when and where to find me tonight. Min Jun's phone rang. He answered in rapid Korean, his voice growing more agitated with each word. When he hung up, his face was pale. What is it? Jun Seo demanded. The restaurant. It's on fire. Through the hospital window they could see the orange glow on the horizon, smoke rising like a funeral pyre against the Seattle skyline. Pier 47 restaurant, where Imani had served coffee and minded her own business, where she'd built a quiet life away from violence and betrayal, was burning. They're erasing evidence, she said quietly. Whatever happened tonight, someone wants to make sure there's no trace left behind. Jun Seo reached for her hand, his fingers warm despite the IV. I'm sorry. You didn't ask for any of this. Neither did you. She squeezed his hand gently. But we're in it now. Min Jun was already making calls, organizing security, damage control, the 1,000 details that came with being a target. But Imani barely heard him. She was thinking about the text message on her phone, about men who died in their cells, about a fire that was consuming the last remnants of her peaceful life. Someone wanted Jun Seo dead, someone with power, resources, and the patience to plan an elaborate trap, someone who wouldn't stop just because tonight had failed, and now they knew about her. The safe house was a converted warehouse in Georgetown, all exposed brick and bulletproof windows. Jun Seo had been discharged against medical advice, his arm in a sling. His face drawn with pain he refused to acknowledge. Imani sat across from him at a steel table, studying surveillance photos that made her blood run cold. These were taken yesterday, Min Jun said, spreading the images between them. Someone's been watching you for weeks. The photos showed Imani leaving her apartment, walking to work, serving tables at the restaurant. In every shot, she was unaware of the camera, living her life, while someone documented her every move. The violation felt like ice water in her veins. Why? She asked. I'm nobody. I serve coffee and save tips. You're former military police, Jun Seo said quietly. You have training, instincts, skills that most people don't. Someone knew that if I was ever in real danger, you might intervene. So they what? Planned for me to save you? They planned for you to die trying. Min Jun's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Think about it. Korean Mafia boss and American military veteran killed together in a parking garage. The media would have a field day. 2 worlds colliding, violence begetting violence. It would justify a massive crackdown on our operations. Imani felt the pieces clicking into place like a weapon being assembled. Someone wanted you dead, but they also wanted it to look like gang violence, random street crime. Except you survived. Both of you. Min Jun pulled out his laptop, showing them a news article from that morning. Now the story is different, Now it's about a waitress who saved a businessman from muggers. Heroic. Sympathetic. Completely wrong. The headline read, "Local waitress saves restaurant owner from armed robbery." No mention of the Korean Mafia. No talk of organized crime. Just a feel-good story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Someone's controlling the narrative, Jun Seo realized. Someone with enough influence to shape how the media reports this. Someone who needs you alive now, Imani added, because killing you after this story would raise too many questions. Min Jun nodded grimly. Which means they'll try a different approach, something that looks like an accident, or... He hesitated. Or what? Or they'll go after the people you care about instead. The words hit Imani like a physical blow. Her sister in Portland. Her elderly parents in Detroit. The few friends she'd made in Seattle, all of them innocent, all of them now potential targets, because she'd chosen to step into that garage. "We can protect them," Jun Seo said, reading her expression. "My people can..." "Your people." Imani's voice was sharp with sudden anger. "Your people are the reason this is happening. Someone in your organization sold you out, remember? How do I know they won't sell out my family too?" The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Min Jun's hand moved instinctively toward his jacket, but Jun Seo held up his good hand. "She's right," he said quietly. "We can't trust anyone inside the organization, not until we know who the traitor is." "Jun Seo, you can't seriously be considering..." "I'm considering everything." His voice carried absolute authority. "Starting with a complete audit of everyone who knew about my meeting last night. Phone records, financial statements, travel history, everything. That's half the organization. Then that's half the organization." Jun Seo stood, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. "And until we find our traitor, Imani stays with me. Personal protection." "I don't need," Imani began. "Yes, you do." His dark eyes met hers, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not just concern for her safety, but something deeper. Something that scared her more than bullets or betrayal. "You saved my life, now let me save yours." Before she could argue, Min Jun's phone rang. He answered, spoke briefly in Korean, then hung up with an expression that could have frozen fire. "What?" Jun Seo demanded. "The Nakamura family wants a meeting. Tonight. They say they have information about who ordered the attack. It's a trap." "Probably, but if they really do know something..." Min Jun shrugged. "We can't afford to ignore it. Then we go, but carefully." "We?" Imani stared at him. "You're not going anywhere. You were shot 12 hours ago. This is my organization, my responsibility. Your responsibility is to heal so you can actually lead that organization." She stood, facing him across the table. "You want to protect me? Fine. But I'm not watching you walk into another ambush because you're too proud to admit you're hurt." For a moment, the warehouse was silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic. Then Jun Seo smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "You know, in my culture, arguing with your boss can be considered disrespectful. Good thing I don't work for you." "Actually," Min Jun interrupted, "as of this morning you do. I took the liberty of putting you on our payroll as a security consultant. Retroactive to yesterday." Imani stared at him. "You did what?" "You're unemployed. The restaurant burned down. You need income. We need someone with your skills who isn't compromised by years of loyalty to the organization. It's practical. I didn't agree to..." "50,000 a month," Jun Seo said quietly. "Plus benefits, plus protection for your family. All you have to do is what you did last night, watch my back." The number hit her like a physical blow. 50,000 a month was more than she'd made in a year as a waitress. It was enough to pay off her student loans, help her parents with their medical bills, maybe even start that self-defense studio she'd been dreaming about. It was also blood money, earned in a world she'd spent 3 years trying to escape. "I need time to think." "Time is something we don't have." Min Jun showed her another photo on his phone. a black sedan parked outside her apartment building. They know where you live. They're watching, waiting for you to go home so they can finish what they started. Imani looked at the photo, then at Jun Seo, then at the surveillance images of her own life spread across the table like evidence in a murder trial. She thought about her sister, her parents, the innocent people who would suffer because she'd chosen to be a hero for 30 seconds in a parking garage. If I do this, she said finally, I do it my way. No killing unless there's no other choice. No innocent people get hurt. And when this is over, I walk away clean. Agreed. And I want to know everything. Who your enemies are, how your organization works, what we're really up against. No secrets, no need-to-know basis. Jun Seo extended his good hand. Partners? Imani stared at his outstretched hand, knowing that shaking it would change everything, would drag her back into a world of violence and moral ambiguity she'd sworn to leave behind. But the alternative was watching innocent people die because she'd been too proud to accept help. She shook his hand. Partners. Outside, the black sedan started its engine and drove away, but Imani knew it would be back. They all would be back until this was finished one way or another. She just hoped they'd all survive long enough to see how it ended. The Nakamura meeting was set for midnight at a neutral location, the observation deck of the Space Needle, closed to tourists but accessible to people with the right connections. Jun Seo insisted on going despite his injury, and Imani insisted on going with him despite every instinct screaming that it was a mistake. They rode the elevator in silence, the city spreading out below them like a circuit board of light and shadow. Jun Seo wore a black suit that concealed his shoulder holster, his injured arm still in a sling. Imani had traded her waitress uniform for dark jeans and a leather jacket that hid her own weapon, a Glock 19 that Min Jun had provided with obvious reluctance. You don't have to do this, Jun Seo said as the elevator climbed. I can handle Nakamura alone. With one good arm and a bullet wound, against the head of the Japanese Yakuza, Imani checked her weapon one more time. I don't think so. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I stepped into that garage. She met his eyes in the elevator's reflection. Besides, someone has to watch your back. Apparently your own people can't be trusted to do it. The elevator doors opened onto the observation deck, and they stepped into a world of wind and vertigo. Seattle stretched out in every direction, the sound and the mountains dark silhouettes against the star-filled sky. Hiroshi Nakamura waited by the western windows, a small man in an expensive coat, flanked by two bodyguards who looked like they bench-pressed motorcycles for fun. Kang-san, Nakamura said with a slight bow, I was sorry to hear about your troubles. Were you? Jun Seo's voice was carefully neutral. Or were you the cause of them? Direct as always, I admire that. Nakamura gestured toward the city below. Beautiful view from up here. Makes our problems seem very small, doesn't it? My problems seem pretty significant to me. Of course, someone tried to kill you. Someone with resources, connections, patience. Someone who knew your routines, your security protocols, your weaknesses. Nakamura's gaze shifted to Imani. And who is this lovely young woman? My security consultant. Ah, the waitress who saved your life. I read about it in the papers. Very romantic, very American. The noble civilian risking everything for a stranger. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Except she's not a civilian, is she? Former military police, 2 tours in Afghanistan, decorated veteran with specialized training in close-quarters combat and criminal investigation. Imani felt ice form in her stomach. How do you know about your service record? My dear, in our business, information is more valuable than gold, and the information about you is particularly interesting. Nakamura pulled out a tablet, showing them a military photo of Imani in dress uniform. Staff Sergeant Imani Rowe, recipient of the Bronze Star for Valor in Combat, specialist in anti-corruption investigations. Responsible for exposing a weapons trafficking ring that was costing American lives. What's your point? Jun Seo's voice was deadly quiet. My point is that someone knew exactly who she was when they planned your assassination. Someone who understood that her military training would compel her to intervene if she witnessed an attack. Someone who wanted her involved from the beginning. The wind whipped across the observation deck, carrying the scent of rain and revelation. Imani felt the pieces of the puzzle rearranging themselves in her mind, forming a picture she didn't want to see. "You're saying I was set up?" "I'm saying you were recruited by someone who needed a person with your specific skills and moral compass. Someone who couldn't trust their own organization to handle a delicate situation. That's impossible. I chose to help. Nobody forced me." "Nobody forced you," Nakamura agreed. "But someone made sure you'd be in the right place at the right time with the right motivation. The question is, who benefits from having a decorated military investigator embedded in Kang-san's inner circle?" Junseo turned to stare at her, and Imani saw the exact moment when suspicion bloomed in his dark eyes. "The job at the restaurant. How did you get it?" I applied online. They called me the next day, said I was exactly what they were looking for." The words felt like ash in her mouth as she realized how naive they sounded. "Who interviewed you?" "The manager. A woman named Sarah Chen," she said. Imani's voice trailed off as memory supplied details she'd ignored at the time. "She said they needed someone with a military background, someone who could handle difficult customers." "Sarah Chen doesn't exist," Nakamura said gently. "The restaurant's real manager is a man named David Park. He's been on vacation in Hawaii for the past month, completely unaware that someone has been using his restaurant as a staging ground for an elaborate operation." The observation deck seemed to tilt beneath Imani's feet. Everything she'd thought she knew about the past 8 months was crumbling like sand castles at high tide. "Who?" Junseo's voice was barely above a whisper. "Who orchestrated this? Someone who needed Kang-san alive but discredited. Someone who could benefit from a war between your organization and mine. Someone who understood that the best way to destroy an enemy is to make them destroy themselves." Nakamura's smile was sad now, almost sympathetic. Someone who's been playing a very long game. Before anyone could respond, the elevator dinged behind them. The doors opened, and Min-jun stepped onto the observation deck flanked by 4 men in dark suits. His face was calm, almost serene, like a man who'd finally stopped pretending to be someone else. "Hello, brother," he said to Junseo. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Junseo staggered backward, his good hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "Min-jun, you're the one who's been planning your downfall for 2 years?" "Yes." Min-jun's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "The one who hired Miss Rowe to work at the restaurant?" "Also yes." "The one who's been feeding information to our enemies while positioning myself to take over when you finally self-destructed?" "Guilty as charged." "Why?" The word came out broken, barely human. "Because you're weak, Junseo. You always have been. Father knew it, the elders know it, even your precious soldiers know it. You want to go legitimate, to build something clean and honorable. But our world doesn't work that way. Our world requires strength, ruthlessness, the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive." Imani's hand moved toward her weapon, but Min-jun's men were already drawing theirs. 4 guns against 2 with nowhere to run and a 500-foot drop in every direction. "You set me up," she said, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. "You used my service record, my psychology, my need to help people. You manipulated me into caring about him." "I gave you a purpose," Min-jun corrected. "You were wasting away in that apartment, serving coffee to strangers, pretending you didn't miss the adrenaline of combat. I offered you a chance to be a hero again. By lying to me, by making me complicit in your betrayal, by giving you exactly what you wanted, a chance to save someone who needed saving. The fact that it served my purposes as well is just good planning." Junseo was staring at his brother like he was looking at a stranger. "The attack in the garage was supposed to kill you both, but Miss Rowe proved more capable than anticipated, and you proved more willing to sacrifice yourself than I expected. So I adapted. Used the media attention to make you look sympathetic, vulnerable, made the other families think you were weak. And now you disappear, both of you. A tragic accident, a lover's suicide pact, whatever story sells best. I take over the organization, restore our reputation for strength, and everyone wins. Except us. Well, yes, except you. The wind howled across the observation deck, and for a moment, the only sound was the whisper of fabric and the distant hum of the city below. Then Nakamura cleared his throat. "This is all very dramatic," he said mildly, "but I'm afraid I can't allow it." Minjun turned toward him, confusion flickering across his features. "What? Did you really think I came here alone? That I would walk into a trap without insurance?" Nakamura smiled, and suddenly the observation deck was full of red laser dots as sniper scopes found their targets. "My people have been watching this building for hours. Your men are already dead." The sound of bodies hitting the floor came from the elevator shaft, muffled thumps that spoke of silenced weapons and professional efficiency. Minjun's bodyguards spun toward the sound, and that moment of distraction was all Imani needed. She moved like her training had taught her, fast, decisive, lethal. Her weapon cleared its holster as she rolled behind the observation deck's railing, using the steel structure as cover. Junseo followed her lead, his injured arm hampering his movement but not his determination. Gunfire erupted across the deck, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. Nakamura's men had taken positions by the elevators, cutting off escape routes while providing covering fire. Minjun's remaining bodyguards returned fire desperately, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. "It's over, Minjun," Junseo called out over the chaos. "Surrender!" "Never!" His brother's voice was raw with fury and desperation. "I won't let you destroy everything our father built. Father built an empire on honor. You're destroying it with betrayal." Minjun appeared around the edge of the observation platform, his weapon trained on Junseo's head. "Then I'll rebuild it on strength." Imani didn't hesitate. Her shot took Minjun in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon clattering across the deck. He fell to his knees, clutching the wound, his face twisted with pain and rage. "You," he snarled at Imani. "This is all your fault. If you'd just died in that garage like you were supposed to." "If I'd died in that garage, you'd have killed your own brother and destroyed your family's honor." She kept her weapon trained on him, her voice steady. "I'm not sorry I stopped you." The gunfire faded, leaving only the wind and the distant sounds of the city. Nakamura's men had secured the deck, and Minjun's bodyguards lay still in spreading pools of blood. It was over. Junseo approached his brother slowly, his face a mask of grief and determination. "Why, Minjun, we were family." "Family?" Minjun laughed bitterly. "You chose her over family. You chose weakness over strength. I chose love over fear," Junseo said quietly, "and I'd make the same choice again." He looked at Imani, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart skip. Not just gratitude or partnership, but something deeper, something that scared and thrilled her in equal measure. 5 men cornered the Korean Mafia boss in a parking garage, he said softly. The black waitress's secret training saved him, but what really saved me was learning that some things are worth more than power. Imani felt tears she hadn't expected burning behind her eyes. What happens now? Now we rebuild, together. Clean, honest, legitimate. He extended his good hand toward her. "If you'll have me." She took his hand, feeling the calluses and scars that told the story of his life. "Partners?" "Partners," he agreed, "in everything." As the police sirens wailed in the distance and the city lights twinkled below, Imani realized that sometimes the best way to escape your past was to embrace your future, whatever form it might take. Years later, Imani stood in the doorway of the Rokang Community Center, watching Junseo teach a self-defense class to a group of teenage girls. His shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a thin scar that he wore like a badge of honor. The dragon tattoo on his neck had been joined by a smaller one on his wrist, two interlocked hands representing the partnership that had saved them both. The community center was everything she'd dreamed of and more. Self-defense classes, job training programs, counseling services for veterans transitioning to civilian life. All of it funded by the legitimate businesses that had risen from the ashes of the old organization. Min Jun was serving 25 years in federal prison, his empire of corruption dismantled piece by piece. Some of his former associates had chosen to follow Jun Seo's new path. Others had simply disappeared into the shadows where such men belonged. Mrs. Kang, one of the teenage students, approached, her face bright with excitement. Mr. Kang says you're the one who taught him everything he knows about fighting. Is that true? Imani smiled, watching her husband demonstrate a defensive move with the patience of a born teacher. He taught me a few things too. Like what? Like how to trust someone completely. Like how love can be stronger than fear. Like how sometimes the best way to save someone is to let them save you back. The girl looked confused, but Imani didn't mind. Some lessons could only be learned through experience, in parking garages and hospital rooms and observation decks high above the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jun Seo. "Dinner tonight, just the two of us." She typed back, "Always," because some partnerships were worth fighting for. Some love stories were worth the risk. And sometimes, the waitress really did save the day. Thank you for staying until the end. Korean Mafia Lovers has many more passionate stories waiting for you. Subscribe to the channel for new romance stories every week. Your support helps us create these incredible love journeys.